Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the Friday Roundup Live. Of course. How are we all doing this fine Friday? It is the weekend. It's Russian Grand Prix weekend. I know it's Russia and it doesn't often throw up a great race, although now I've said that it'll probably be the best one of the season. But are we still looking forward to getting some track action this weekend, some racing hopefully, and see what we're going to get on Saturday and Sunday, because today was interesting but not particularly thrilling, as is often the case with Friday. We're going to go over the Friday practice results from FP1 and FP2 in just a moment, and some of the talking points, a few bits, nothing huge to be honest, but a few bits to talk about. Going to just a quick recap on the news that came out of Haas this morning. I am watching Twitter just in case Torro Rosso decide to announce something, but it's looking less and less likely today. We'll also go over very quickly what's left in terms of the silly season and driver market, the seats that are still open and moves that could be happening. It's another race week Friday, and I am going to be talking about Esteban Ocon again, and also a little bit on George Russell as well, after some interesting stuff was said by Toto Wolff and Otmar Safnauer regarding Ocon's future, and I'll give you a quick rundown of three very quick news stories as well. So plenty to get through over the next 30 to 40 minutes. So let's kick it all off by having a look at that FP1 result from this morning. Very different to the afternoon. That's the best way to put it. Sebastian Vettel topped the session, just 5/100ths clear of Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. It is such a shame that they're taking penalties this weekend, because they are right in the mix. Maybe not over one lap once all the engine modes are cranked up and all that, but certainly on race pace it looked like they could be in the mix. So it is a shame, but that's part of the game, I suppose. Lewis Hamilton third for Mercedes. They didn't use the hypersofts in the morning session though, so that's a little bit irrelevant in many ways, with Valtteri Bottas half a second off Vettel in fourth. Daniel Ricciardo in fifth, well off his teammates' pace, but he did have issues, and as you can see there, did half the laps of his teammates, so we'll get into that in just a moment. Esteban Ocon P6 Force India once again looking fairly decent this weekend. Can they overhaul McLaren in that Constructors' Championship? I reckon they can, you know. It's going to be interesting for the rest of the season. If nothing else, watch that. Kimi Raikkonen seventh for Ferrari, not a great morning for him, but of course, as he said many times, Friday means absolutely nothing, and he doesn't know why people read anything into it, so there you go. That's Kimi for you. Absolutely love him. He's brilliant like that. Kevin Magnussen P8 for Haas, looking better this weekend again. Haas looking fairly solid this Friday. Nico Hülkenberg 9th. Antonio Giovinazzi, big shout out to him, P10, fantastic performance from him. Roman Grosjean 11th with Pierre Gasly 12th. Lando Norris, solid morning for him as well in P13 ahead of Charles Leclerc. Artem Markelov also in for FP1, he was 15th. Stoffel Van Dorn 16th. Nicholas Latifi, another one in for FP1, he was 17th. And then it's Sergei Sorokin 18th for Williams, 2.7 seconds off the pace, and just well ahead of Brendan Hartley in 19th, and Lance Stroll brought up the field in 20th. I'm going to go over the talking points in a minute. Let's get the slightly less interesting results out of the way first. So straight on to FP2. It was, well, opposite really, wasn't it? Lewis Hamilton, he was fastest in the afternoon session from teammate Valtteri Bottas in what was, yeah, I think we could say a fairly dominant Mercedes performance in the afternoon. I mean, you know, it is Friday. We can't really read too much into it, but it does look a little bit ominous if that's the pace they're showing already. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do tomorrow morning. And obviously in qualifying, again, the Red Bulls right up there. Max Verstappen P3 and Daniel Ricciardo 4th. Ferrari's 5th and 6th, not brilliant for them. Vettel half a second off the pace and Raikkonen a second off, but you can see there, very different in his choice of tyres versus the Mercedes boys. Sergio Perez again showing that Force India have got pace. Actually, Otmar Safnauer saying they're very confident this weekend because of the race pace they've got. So Force India looking solid. Pierre Gasly, very good again in P8. He was solid in the morning and he was very good in the afternoon. Marcus Ericsson, the terrible Marcus Ericsson, making the top 10. All right on a Friday, but he'll take anything. He's 10th place for Sauber. Kevin Magnussen in 11th. Carlos Sainz in 12th place. Renault, yeah, look all right. I wouldn't say they look anything massively special this weekend, but then, you know, again, I keep saying it's Friday. Charles Leclerc 13th, Nico Hülkenberg in 14th place. Grosjean a little bit worse off this afternoon in 15th. Brendan Hartley 16th, and the back two rows, if you like. What do you say? Both McLarens and both Williams is the former strong teams, the former world champions, the big names of the sport once upon a time, bringing up the last four places in the field. I know it's only Friday, but that does not look absolutely brilliant at all for them, does it? So they're going to start sorting something out between them. Certainly McLaren should be doing better than that. But let's go into the talking points for the morning session and the FP1. It got off to a bit of an odd start, actually, as I recall. I think there were 5 drivers sat waiting in their cars at the end of the pit lane for a full 10 minutes. All apparently in a bid to potentially gain a place on the grid for this Sunday's race, with all these stupid engine penalties that get thrown around. Basically, the point of it is that according to them, or the way they see it, I thought the rules were different. I thought it was based on who went to the stewards first and said, we're taking a penalty. But apparently some teams are saying that no, it's whoever's first out on track will get promoted a position. So Lando Norris was front of the queue, crucially in Fernando Alonso's car. So in theory, if that's correct, if their team's theory is correct, he should start ahead of the Red Bulls and the Torro Rossos on the grid on Sunday. It's ridiculous that we're even doing this, but there you go. It's part of the game, I guess. It's part of the rules. And sat there for 10 minutes. It's going to get to the point, isn't it? With cars just queuing at the end of the pit lanes to try and gain a position because they've had to take an engine penalty. I mean, what do you say? I mean, until they come up with a better solution to it, there's not really anything you can say. It wasn't plain sailing for Daniel Ricciardo in the morning session, as I kind of touched on there. His Red Bull caught fire, I believe, and that left him on the sidelines for much of the session. Initially, he was called in, according to Danny Rick, as a precaution, so the team could check a few things over, and then as soon as it got in the pit lane and was being wheeled into the garage, smoke began pouring out the car, and it was quite clear that not all was brilliant for him. He was having some serious issues. Not a great start to what's already going to be a pretty frustrating week for the Bulls, to be honest. I mean, they've got those engine penalties, which sees them down the back with Torro Rosso and Fernando Alonso. I mean, for us on Sunday, brilliant. But for them, not so good. So that was all resolved, and he was able to get out in the second session, as you saw, and deliver some pretty solid times as well. I've already given a huge shout out to Antonio Giovinazzi for that position of P10. Again, I know it's only Friday, but he gets one session in the weekend. He's just signed for Sauber, and he goes and does that. And I think that's just the kind of perfect way, isn't it, to sign off on that, what's been a really decent week for him. 3/10 up on Charles Leclerc as well, interestingly enough. I'm not going to read too much into that because we know what Charles Leclerc can do, because in the second session Marcus Ericsson was quicker than his teammate as well, so maybe on different programs, but it's still nice to see that he's gone out this week and he's got his FP1 shot and he's beaten his teammate, so not bad at all from Antonio Giovinazzi. Big shout out to him. In terms of the other FP1 stand-ins, you had Lando Norris. He ended up the session in P13, as I've just said. He was just over a tenth ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn, which is quite interesting, so he seems to be getting to grips with that car a little bit better than the Belgian this weekend, so it'd be nice to see some of these in FP2 and FP3 as well, but I don't suppose that would be crazy, wouldn't it? The idea of giving a car to a stand-in driver for 3 sessions and giving your main driver no setup time. But it'd be interesting to see what they could do on proper quali pace on a Friday morning, on a Saturday morning, if that makes sense, just to see where they really are, because you never know on a Friday with sort of the programs they're running, if you like. So it doesn't really tell us a lot, but it's nice to see him beating Stoffel Van Dorn. Artem Markelov, he was 15th, but 9/10 off Nico Hülkenberg again. We don't know what programs have been run, but Hülkenberg's session, it ended early, by the way, with a few problems with the Renault, but, he did outpace. Markelov did outpace Van Dorn, Stroll, Sorokin, Hartley. Okay, I've not maybe listed there in terms of Stroll and Sorokin and Hartley, given the cars they've got. I've not listed the best drivers to compare him to, but they're drivers that have done a full season, so I think that's something to look at. Yes, a long way off his teammate, but it's Nico Hülkenberg with a vast amount of experience. Nicholas Latifi was 17th for Force India. Quite a way off Esteban Ocon. In fact, a second and a half, I think it was in the end. So not brilliant, but I mean, again, it's one session. He doesn't get many, and he's done the job. And again, beat both the Williams drivers and Brendan Hartley, so deserves a bit of a shout out for that one as well. But it's good to see so many having a cracking FP1. To be honest, I quite like that. So a bit more of that would be nice. In fact, maybe even a session just for the juniors would be nice to see every weekend. But FP2 talking points, there was a spin for Sebastian Vettel in the session on his fast lap. Sorry, not his first lap, on his fast lap. He did have to pit for fresh ultras after that one. Then he went again and kind of all got sorted out, just avoided the wall, so no real damage done. I think it was down at turn 13, so yeah, not really ideal, but he did manage to get back out. Not quite the disaster that we saw in Singapore in FP2, of course, but earlier in the session, intriguingly enough, he wasn't actually able to match the pace of the Mercedes on the hypersofts, and I think that's where a lot of people's question marks and concerns have come from. But how many times this season have we seen Ferrari go out on a Friday, be well off the pace, and then stick it on pole on the Saturday, or be right up there again? So you really can't read too much into it, and you never really know what teams are doing, certainly Ferrari. So we will see tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting one on Saturday, definitely. Over both the sessions, I think the big talking point in terms of hypersofts is pretty much as expected. They just were not lasting very long at all. And unfortunately, that now looks as though we could be set for yet another thrilling one-stop strategy on Sunday. I know you all love your one-stop strategies and all your fantastic, brilliant tyre management. It's what we all tune in for, isn't it? Drivers driving slow enough just to get their tyres a few extra laps. It's what we want. But that's what we're going to see, I think, on Sunday. Not to the extent we saw in Singapore, because, of course, in Russia, that's a bit more of a gamble because you can overtake in Russia. Apparently, although one overtake all of last year outside of the first lap, so I assume you can overtake in Russia, but I think we are going to see some tyre management early in the race from the front runners. They're probably then going to go to the softs because I believe, from the information that I've seen, the softs are pretty much expected to be able to run as long as they want them to. So hyper softs to softs is probably the way they're going to go at the front of the field. Whether Sebastian Vettel will do that, I'm not sure. He's not keen on those soft tyres, is he? We saw that in Singapore and he's only got the one set, so it'd be interesting to see what he does with that. He might try the ultras again, but yeah, don't get excited about a mixed strategy on Sunday, kind of is the point I'm making. As I've already said, real shame that Red Bull have got to take these engine penalties because they both look like they're holding their own towards the sharp end of the grid and could have really been right in there. I mean, I fully expect they're probably going to come back to 5th and 6th. I think that's a pretty safe bet, unless there's some chaos and maybe a couple of retirements out of those top two teams. Maybe they can nick a podium, but, you know, I think 5th and 6th with the pace they've got is pretty much nailed on. They can overtake. They're going to put very skinny wings on and they're just going to go for it tomorrow, which again is great for us. You know, Fernando Alonso out of position, both the Red Bull boys out of position, but we want to see them up there. We want to see Red Bull challenging Ferrari and Mercedes. You know, it's great that they can fly past a Williams. It's fantastic they can cruise past, I don't know, a Renault, but it's not really, you know, it's not what we want to see. We want to see them fighting with Raikkonen, fighting with Bottas and Hamilton and Vettel, and that's kind of the point of racing, not just easing past people who are probably not going to race you anyway because you're not part of their Grand Prix. But yeah, in terms of race pace, I've not actually seen too much on the long run pace and I didn't get a chance to work it out myself, unfortunately, because I've been massively busy today, which is annoying. But from what I understand, Vettel is around about a couple of tenths off the pace of Lewis Hamilton on race pace. But again, this is all set on Friday. We really don't know what they're going to do. And I know I've said that about 17 times already, but we just don't. And that's a fact of Friday. It's an important part of the weekend in terms of setup, but it doesn't tell us as much as we like to make out that it tells us. So that was pretty much it for the practice sessions. Just going to take some of your reaction to it and see if I've missed anything. As I say, I've been really busy today, so it's been one of those where it's been on in the background. I've been trying to pay attention as much as possible. A few of you very delighted to see that we're going to get a nice, exciting one-stopper on Sunday. I know I really can't wait for that. I really, really can't wait. I'm being massively sarcastic. My tone may not be changing, but I can assure you I'd be very sarcastic. Let's have a quick flick through, see if there's anything I have missed. Yeah, I think we've just about covered it all. I can't see anything that I've missed. There's not a huge amount. But yeah, we'll move on. We'll move on from practice because, like I say, there's not too much point reading an awful lot into it. So I can sit here and start speculating and, oh, look, Ferrari are a second off, or Raikkonen's a second off the pace. That means he's going to be 6th on the grid. You know, it's not. It just means absolutely nothing. So let's roll on to the Haas news this morning. A little bit of a recap on this one. I won't say too much because there is already a video. If you missed that, it went out this morning in a mad rush. That is up on the channel. If you're watching this afterwards, I will link it in a card as well, so you can go check it out. But basically, Haas have stunned us all. We're all in such shock that they've decided to stick with their driver lineup for 2019, and that is Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean, their 3rd season together. I believe their 3rd season together it will be next year, so there you go. They're sticking once again, and as I said, I think it makes perfect sense for them. I can completely understand why they've done it. There's no need to go looking for, you know, the next Lando Norris. There's no need to get sucked into the silly season stuff when you've got a driver lineup that, when Grosjean keeps it clean, he is super quick and can deliver. And again, with Kevin Magnussen, as we've seen this year, he can deliver as well. So why change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Again, as I said in this morning's video, 5 or 6 races ago, maybe before Austria, sort of after Canada, I thought Grosjean was really at risk. I thought it was right on the bubble of possibly getting dropped. I still fully expected they'd keep him, but I just thought it was really in danger. And if somebody, say Ferrari, had turned around and said, we're not going to take Leclerc, would you like him? He could have ended up out of a seat, but it's kind of fallen that way as well. The more I've reflected on it, when you think Giovinazzi's gone to Sauber, Raikkonen's gone to Sauber, Leclerc's gone up to Ferrari, so there wasn't really another option that they were linked to other than maybe Perez, and he's always, for me, pretty much been staying at Force India. So it's a really good decision for Haas. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They have delivered over the last few seasons. What they've achieved this year, Grosjean since Austria and Magnussen, this last two races aside, pretty much all season has been brilliant. And they totally did. They've both earned it. Like I say, 7 races ago, no, Grosjean was not earning it. But since Austria, he's shown what he can do. And they both deserve an extension. So it makes total sense. And there's not much point saying too much else on it. I will take some of your reaction on it from the chat, though, because I know most people seem to agree that it's the right call and it's a smart move. But there are quite a few as well that think that they've kind of chickened out a little bit, played it too safe, and they could have gone and got another driver, maybe taken that gamble on an Ocon. So it's all open to interpretation. I think it's spot on. Kevin Magnussen is younger than Stoffel Van Dorn, according to somebody's obviously said in chat somewhere, so that's a bit of a surprise. I didn't know that one either. Is Ocon out of F1 now? We're going to come on to him in just a minute. Caleb, Leclerc is overrated. I think you need to go and watch him before you make comments like that, but there you go. They made the right move, says Ryan. It's a good team, but their biggest issue in my opinion, is consistency, says Ryan M. Exactly. We've kind of hit this point, haven't we, where Magnussen's been really good. Last couple of races tailed off. Grosjean picked up after Austria and really started to improve. And you sort of think they need both of them to deliver at the same time, don't they? It'd be ideal to... I think it was Jonty maybe that said it on Wednesday. Just seen him in the chat there. Hello, Jonty. But I think he said it on Wednesday that it's really odd that they can't seem to both deliver at the same time. So if they do, as we saw in Australia prior to the pit stop, of course, there you go. That's what they could be doing. So I think it's a good call. In fact, John says they're nailing reliability and speed of the car now. They need to get a faster driver or two. I don't know if that's talking about Haas, but they are. I'm really impressed with Magnussen this season. Exciting lineup, boring livery, says Toby. People do not like the Haas livery, do they? But I think the general consensus seems to be that it was a smart move. Had they decided to drop Grosjean, I don't think people would have been up in arms about it because of the way he performed early in the season. But I think it's a clever one. Next season, Grosjean does not need to step up to Kevin. He needs to do so. It does need, to step up to Kevin. I agree, Oliver. He needs to really show what he can do. 2 controversial drivers. Not really controversial, more so iffy at times, says Roshan. Oh, I'm going to get that so wrong. I'm so sorry. Yeah, they've been controversial in the past, haven't they? Magnussen's really cleaned up his act this season. I was very critical of him in his attitude through the winter, as long-term viewers of the channel will know. I say long-term, it's only been a year, but there you go, you know what I mean. But yeah, you'll know that I was quite critical of him in the winter, and he's absolutely, as I said this morning, sat me down big time this season and shut me up. And that's what I want. Any driver I ever say anything negative about or criticise in any way, I want them to then go and prove me wrong, because that's who I am. I want to see drivers do well. I want the grid full of drivers competing at their best. Unfortunately, we don't have that at the moment. We seem to have quite a few mediocre's harsh, but kind of average drivers that are just sort of plodding along and getting away with it. And I think Grosjean in particular has got more pace than people give him credit for, and he's a better driver than people give him credit for. And Magnussen's shown this season that his critics in the winter, including myself, were completely wrong. But silly season. We're going to move on from Haas, because I could talk about this all day and just ramble on about how underrated I think Grosjean is. People say he's overrated. I think he's quite underrated, to be honest. But there is your 2019 grid as it stands. Those in green, as I said on Wednesday, are confirmed. In the yellowy orange are probably going to happen, and the red, we just don't know. Notice Williams. Nobody knows what's going on there. I'm not even sure they do. I think it's pretty confident that it's going to be Stroll and Perez at Force India for next season. I'd be surprised if anything changes. Actually, on that, I will mention that one. Otmar Safnauer was asked by Sky about Sergio Perez's future just after the session today, just after FP2, and he said, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, "We will announce our lineup soon," and then gave them a look that kind of, for me, didn't confirm it. I'm not going to claim I'm some kind of genius body language expert or anything stupid like that. But when someone just gives a look, and then Paul di Resta gave him a look back, and I thought, yeah, Perez is staying. Everything Perez has said over the last week as well leads me to believe that. And I never thought he was leaving, really. I mean, Ocon maybe, but Ocon may be taking that place over Perez, but I don't see that now. And I think it will be Stroll and Perez. Stroll is guaranteed, and Checo, for me, I think, Singapore aside, absolutely deserves to keep that position. So there we go. Torro Rosso Kvyat is expected to be announced at some point this weekend. Reports were saying today. I'm just going to have a double check on Twitter and make sure it hasn't. I'm sure you'll all tell me in chat if it does, as you did scream at me when Gasly was confirmed that time on the F1 Daily stream, I think it was, which left me in a right flap trying to work that one out. But yeah, nothing yet on Daniel Kvyat. It is expected to be this weekend. What time are we at? UK time now, it's 4:20. So I would probably guess now it's most likely going to be tomorrow morning if it's going to come this weekend. I can't see it on Sunday morning because that tends to take the shine away from the Grand Prix or the attention away from that a little bit. So I think tomorrow morning, maybe before FP3, it might happen, or between qualifying and FP3, but we shall see. If not, it'll be next week. Obviously, don't forget as well, Torro Rosso, Honda engine, Japan next up, so they could be making announcements there as well. So we shall see on that one. But Kvyat expected. We already know Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, that was confirmed this week at Sauber and Williams. Who do you reckon? A lot of people think Ocon. He was apparently in negotiations with them. I'm going to talk about him in just a second properly. George Russell is another one that's been linked to that seat. Kubica's name has been thrown back in the frame randomly this last couple of days. I still think Sirotkin will stay, so I think we're waiting on one seat there. You know, Sirotkin, he brings a lot of money with him, a lot of backing, and I'm sorry, but I think he's been really decent this season. He's in a terrible car, and he's really been quite solid. He's been quite solid, and I'm quite impressed with him. I was quite critical of him again in the winter, but he's done a good job this season. So yeah, I'm just looking at chat now. Sirotkin and Ocon or Kubica, says Ryan Thompson. I'm going to come on to Ocon in a minute, and I might be dashing a few dreams with that one. Ocon and the Russian, says Ian. Kubica and maybe Ocon. They're not taking Russell before Ocon. Sorry, says Ryan. Sirotkin will stay, says Toby. I still think they'll keep Sirotkin, says KJ. Ryan also says Ocon and Sirotkin. I think Sirotkin, with the money he brings, and the fact that when he signed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure when he signed, and I've gone back and read this a few weeks ago, I'm sure it was a multi-year deal or a long-term deal. So I think he'll stay. But then, it's a silly season. I didn't expect Daniel Ricciardo to go to Renault and set it all off, but he did. But there you go. And the final spot of Torro Rosso, I'm going to talk about very quickly. A lot of talk about Pascal Wehrlein. That's been the one that's been big on the press, but then he's been testing for Formula E this week, and he was already pretty much nailed on for that before. So I think that's gone. I think that was paper talk. I've got a feeling Hartley might keep it. I can't think of anybody else. Tictum is not going to get enough super license points, regardless of what he does this season. He can have the best last few races of the season, steal that championship from Schumacher, and he still won't have enough super license points. So that cannot happen. Mick Schumacher, way too soon for him. No way. He's having a great second half of the season over in Euro F3, but there's no way he's ready for Formula 1. And I can't think of who else really. So it could be Hartley if it's not going to be Wehrlein. And Wehrlein, like I say, looks set to go to Formula E. So it's going to be interesting. But I do want to carry on with silly season and talk about Esteban Ocon, because some interesting stuff's been said over the last couple of days. Now, Toto Wolff was talking about the young drivers in general for Mercedes, and he said basically there are many good drivers who merit a drive in Formula 1, both young ones and more experienced ones, but at the moment cockpits are a limited commodity. He then said both Esteban and George certainly deserve to be in Formula 1. We are still working on options and will carefully decide what's best for them. If that means having to play the long game, we will continue to prepare and develop them. So that, people will have read that as brilliant. They're trying to get something sorted, but that, for me, was a lot more negative than positive in terms of Ocon's future. And then he added today, I think it was today, with Sky Sports, or possibly yesterday, in an interview with Sky Sports, he said, I haven't got the exact quote, but he said, if Ocon can't land a seat, he is not, quote, desperate, as he is still early in his career and would accept a sabbatical year if that is what is needed. And then unfortunately, after FP2, whilst talking about the future and whatnot with Force India, Otmar Safnauer was again asked about Esteban Ocon, and he confirmed to Sky Sports F1 that a sabbatical was likely for Ocon and that Force India would do all they can to help him, except sign him, obviously. So it's looking increasingly likely, unfortunately, that Esteban Ocon is going to be taking a sabbatical. And it's all right saying sabbatical when you are Alain Prost or Mika Hakkinen, because avenues may open up if you want to come back. That's always the way. Somebody like Ocon, who's a young driver, taking a year out of Formula One and possibly racing as a whole. He's already said himself that he's not interested in looking at Formula E. He's not interested in going and racing anywhere else. He wants to be in Formula One, so he's happy to take a sabbatical, or not happy, but he will take a sabbatical if that's what's needed. That is a dangerous game for a young driver. That is a very dangerous game. Like I say, it's all right being a Prost who's got world championships. He goes and having a year out and then someone will snap him up if he wants to come back. Absolutely. Esteban Ocon, it's a risk. It's a risk because we don't know what's going to happen in Formula 2 next year. We could all of a sudden have 3 or 4 drivers who smash it, absolutely smash it next year. What if George Russell, if he wins the title this year and Mercedes go, well, hang on a minute, do we promote him ahead of Ocon? All of a sudden he slips down that pecking order, and it's a really dangerous game to play for him. I know that it's not his fault. He has no options. This is just the way that, the dice, if you like, have fallen for him this year. There's nothing he can do about that. But I don't think a sabbatical is a smart move for a young driver, unless he's been told by Toto Wolff, you will be in that car in 2020, because, thinking about it, just thinking off the top of my head there must have been some kind of assurances made by Toto Wolff. Otherwise, why would he not push to get released from that contract to try and find himself a seat somewhere, if that makes sense? So maybe he has been told that 2020 is a possibility, or he could get in 2020, but I think it's a risk. I think it's a huge risk. And sabbatical as well, as a young driver, is... why? They need to be in those cars. We've got Norris on the grid next year. We've got talk of Mick Schumacher possibly getting a seat on the grid next year. Leclerc's in a Ferrari. Giovinazzi, 25 when he gets to Australia. He's going to be on the grid next year. So we've got these drivers coming through, yet a driver who not only is young and incredibly talented, but also has a couple of years of experience in Formula One, is not going to be on the grid. And I said this in my little rant, and I promise I won't get onto another Ocon rant, because otherwise the fanboy stuff will start again. But what annoys me is when you look at the bang average drivers in that midfield that are clinging on to their seat in some ways because they've got the money, and in other ways completely unjustifiably, it's an absolute travesty that Esteban Ocon's finding himself without a seat. And how bad is it as well when Williams won't take you? What's going on there? Surely there must be a way to get him in that Williams, unless he doesn't want to drive around at the back of the grid next season just for the sake of being there. We don't know. It might turn out in the winter, he might turn around and say, Williams wanted me, but I didn't want to cruise around at the back of the grid. There you go. So we just don't know. I doubt it. I think he'd take any race seat right now, but it's not looking good. So whether Williams will go for money over talent, I don't know. Maybe they will. Not to say that a pay driver hasn't got some talent, but Ocon would still trump that for me. But it's a frustrating situation. So sabbatical looks the most likely. So if you're an Ocon fan, it's not good news. I will take some of your reactions towards the end of the stream in just a second. I'm going to just run through some of the headlines as well. Some interesting stuff from the world of F1 today, actually. I kind of had a little skim through some of the news websites and was sort of surprised by some of the stuff I found. So I wanted to share them with you because I'm just that kind of guy. How nice am I? So, news mode news mode activated. So, headline 1, Daniel Ricciardo believes that the pressure that comes with driving for Ferrari has contributed to Sebastian Vettel's inconsistent season. Sebastian Vettel, who earlier this week said that he had considered meeting with a sports psychologist but couldn't find anybody that he believed could help him, had already recently said that he was the one putting the pressure on himself. But Daniel Ricciardo believes the expectation that comes with driving for the Scuderia is adding to the pressure he is under. The Aussie also stated that he believes he would be able to cope with that kind of pressure. I'm going to quote him now. He said, "I believe I would be able to cope with that pressure, but until I'm in that position, I can't say." He has won titles before, so maybe that's a little bit of the surprise. You think he's been here and should be used to it. Ferrari is maybe a different organisation than Red Bull, and there's different weights and pressures that come with Ferrari. Again, I'm not sure, I'm speculating, but maybe these things are adding more weight on the shoulders. We are all human. Some interesting quotes there from Daniel Ricciardo, who of course himself was linked with that seat at Ferrari. Stoffel Van Dorn said that his chances of landing a seat in Formula 1 for 2019 are 0, and that he is now looking for drives elsewhere. The Belgian will of course be leaving McLaren at the end of the 2018 season, has been linked with seats in IndyCar and more recently this week, Formula E. And when asked about his future and if he was resigned to leaving Formula 1, Van Dorn said, "Yes, unless anything out of control happens, then maybe, but I think chances of anything like that happening is almost 0. I still feel I deserve a second chance in a good and right environment. The priority, though, is first to find a race drive, which will be the main focus, and target, and then we can see whatever happens in F1 and what options will be open next to that. So that's another one. Van Dorn gone, 0 chances. And finally, in this little rundown, Lewis Hamilton has insisted that the title fight is far from over. There you go. And that his approach to the season will not change until both his hands are on the title. The Mercedes driver, of course, has got that commanding 40-point lead in the Drivers' Championship over Sebastian Vettel. But with 150 points still up for grabs, the season can easily swing with just one DNF. Never forget that. And Hamilton is adamant that with 6 races still to go, it isn't over. Here is his quote. Some interesting stuff from him, actually, to be fair. He says, I don't think you ever have one hand on the title. You either have both hands on it or you don't. 6 races are still a lot of races. It's a long season. We are really just heads down. Everyone's working incredibly hard to continue to improve the car. We're going to be faced with a different challenge as we come to these different races. The target is still exactly the same and the approach is still exactly the same. So despite his 40-point lead, he is not giving up on that one. So it's an interesting one. I know a lot of you will be saying that the title is done and dusted and it's all over and there's no way back now for Sebastian Vettel. But as said there, 150 points on the board, 1 DNF, and all of a sudden Vettel wins that race and everything turns. But you would have to say it would be not a crazy person, but you'd have to be very brave to bet against Lewis Hamilton taking that World Championship. Now it's looking very, very promising for him. So let's have a look at some of your reaction from the chat then, because I know I've seen quite a few of you actually giving your opinions on Ocon. A lot of disappointment as I've sort of been trying to keep an eye on everything. But a few of you saying bye-bye to Van Dorn. That one comes from Seus Gaming. I'm crap with names. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm terrible with them. You know it by now. Williams can't afford not to take Ocon. They need points next season or they will go bust. Of course, absolutely, points win prizes, don't they, Daryl? So there you go. At the end of the day, you think they'd want to value that. But as I've always said, cash on the table is a guarantee. Points and championship position is not. It's a bit of a gamble. So they need to build a good car first, definitely. Van Dorn's age is a disadvantage, says Nation. Göring, that's a good point. What is he, 26? Will he be 26 next year, I think, Van Dorn? So maybe he was another one quite late to the party, wasn't he, in terms of Formula 1? So maybe that's something that's counting against him just a little bit. Haas better take advantage of the engine penalties of their competitors this weekend, says Tonka Toy Truck. Great opportunity for them, isn't it? If they can outpace Renault this weekend, which in theory they should, with it being a bit of a power track. So if they can outpace Renault, they're going to look pretty solid and could jump them in the World Championship, of course. Is Martini leaving F1 as a whole or just Williams? Says Mechanized Chaos, great name. I believe it's as a whole. They're taking their sponsorship away to focus on other things, I believe. I can't remember the statement. It was something along the lines of, we're going to be leaving to focus on other areas, on other things now. They've had their mandate, if you like. They've done what they wanted to do and it's time to move on. So a shame, because I do like the Martini livery when it's done properly. I don't think it was done properly on the Williams, but when it's done properly, it's a very nice livery. And that's totally the reason that sponsors should stay in Formula 1 from my point of view. See you, Ocon. Remember 2 years ago, Wehrlein was quicker than you and he lost his seat. Yeah, not in Formula, well, maybe, but I don't agree with that one. I think Ocon is far better than Wehrlein. Not that Wehrlein's a bad driver, but he's nowhere near the level of Ocon. Ocon's grown and Wehrlein's kind of disappeared. I've always said, though, and I will pick up on that point, if a driver's not taken by a team, there's a reason. Now, whether that's linked to manufacturers, maybe. Whether it's a money thing, possibly. Or maybe they've seen something that we don't see that doesn't appeal to them. We have to remember that, Wehrlein, a lot of people thought he was nailed on for that seat at Mercedes before Bottas was initially linked to it. People thought that, not a lot of people by the way, but people thought that he was in for Williams when they were looking for a driver. It didn't happen. So maybe these teams are seeing something they don't like. Perhaps Ocon's wages are too high for Williams or something like that, or they don't want too many ties to Mercedes. Talk, of course, that they're going to be switching to Renault. So it's going to be a tough one for Ocon, to be honest, but we shall see. And what I will say as well, to people that do point out that Wehrlein was quicker than Ocon a couple of years ago, Ocon was quicker than Verstappen in Formula 3 and beat him. So we'll be careful with that comparison when it comes to years ago. It's how they are now that matters. But I think Wehrlein, if he makes the grid next year, which I don't think he will, it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts to that. I do like the idea of Torro Rosso being a place of redemption next season for Kvyat and Wehrlein to prove people wrong. I think that'd be brilliant. But yeah, it's not I don't see him joining. I think it's Formula E for him next season. Why Ocon not in Torro Rosso? Torro Rosso, well, because of the Mercedes ties. Christian Horner said that in those words, the ties to Mercedes, they're not interested. They're not going to take a driver, another team's young driver, and develop them. So that's never going to happen. That's why when initially Toto Wolff said they would consider dropping Ocon if it helped him out to get a seat, I think that's when the Torro Rosso link really kicked in, because it looked like that could happen. But it's not going to happen now. It looks like it's a sabbatical at best for him, which I'm a little bit frustrated about. But hey, that's life. If Williams separate from Mercedes, they can kiss scoring points goodbye. It says Intensity. They've got Mercedes now, mate, and they're kissing scoring points goodbye. So I don't think it's too much of a step down for them. I don't know why they'd want to walk away from Mercedes. Williams and Ferrari are never going to work together. So it is going to be Renault or Honda, and I don't see Honda going to them. I think there's a bit of an exclusivity thing going on between Honda and Red Bull and Torro Rosso, so it'll be interesting. Why have a junior program if you can't put your drivers in seats? Red Bull and Ferrari can do it. Wehrlein, Ocon have been shafted, and Russell may not even get a seat, says Axe Crazy. Look, I don't know why Mercedes won't invest in a junior team. They say it doesn't make sense for them commercially, which, only they're going to know that. We don't know. But if you've got two drivers in Russell and Ocon that you're desperate to get a seat, and until recently you had Wehrlein as well, who you were also trying to get a seat, why not take a team like Manor, which is what I think they originally thought, to be fair, but take a team and turn them into your junior outfits. So you can get your Russells and your Ocons and your Wehrleins and whatnot on the grid, but they're not interested in it. So there you go. What do you say? Jeffrey says, BS, Ocon has yet to finish ahead of a teammate in F1. Wehrlein has never been beaten by a teammate in F1. Absolutely true, but Ocon is 1 point behind Sergio Perez, who's had 3 fewer retirements and has also had a podium. So if you take that podium away, regardless of the retirements, all of a sudden, or give Ocon one of the finishes he would have got, say, I don't know, Singapore when his teammate wiped him out, he could have ended up with points. Things look very different. So bigger picture. I get what you're saying. I completely get what you're saying. And you're right about Wehrlein, but I'm just saying that, look, sometimes you need to look at everything that goes on, because retirements-wise, he's been shafted a little bit this season. Who wiped him out in France? If somebody in chat can let me know who wiped him out in France. I've got it in my head it was Gasly, but I don't think it was. Do let me know, because that's something that keeps bugging me. Maybe I'll Google that afterwards if nobody knows. BT Mercedes says Robert Evans. That's what I thought Manor were going to be, but they obviously decided not to go with that one. Just going to take a few more before I disappear. Let's have a look. So if you've got any questions, why do people keep writing off Perez's podium? I'm not writing off Perez's podium. I'm just saying that he got a podium, and if you take that away, then he's not quite as impressive this season as maybe the points are showing. He's only a point clear of his teammate as well. So I would never take anything away. I don't even take anything away from Stroll for his podium. Yes, all right, fine. He looked into his podium, Lance Stroll, but he was still there at the flag. He was still there to take the podium at the end of the day. So, and you've got to be there to capitalise on that look. So I'll never take podiums away from people. Got hit by Grosjean and then Gasly. Grosjean took him out. Thank you very much. So it was Grosjean that hit Gasly, and then Gasly hit. There we go. I knew he was involved somewhere in there, Pierre Gasly, but I didn't think he was necessarily responsible. I think he was hit by Grosjean as well, wasn't he, on the start-finish straight? So yeah, a bit of a... Not a good one for the French drivers in France. That was ages ago. Why are we talking about France? Anyway, that was just something that came to me randomly. Going to literally take 2 more questions, and then I'm going to have to vanish, unfortunately. I would love to sit here and talk silly season and whatnot and speculate about the weekend with you all a bit more, but a lot going on at the moment, unfortunately. So any chance Ocon in Force India? Unfortunately not. If Otmar Safinow is to be believed, he said it is likely it'll be sabbatical for Esteban Ocon next season, and pretty much confirmed it would be Perez with a look. And again, I'm not a body language expert, but just a look. You know what I mean? Just a little look towards Paul di Resta, almost a wink. So I think it was all done. Where's Jonty? That's not going to count as the last question. Don't worry. He doesn't join me with Friday ones, unfortunately, because I do them too early in the day for him. I like to get them done nice and early after FP2, so everything's nice and raw. So he's not with me for this one, but he'll be back. I think he's back on Sunday with the post-race, and Stuart Chainbear will be with us as well for the post-race on Sunday. So looking forward to that one as ever. Just literally looking for one more. Some people asking about the Honda Spec C. I have no idea. I should do, and I'm appalled that I don't know, but I haven't checked up on that, whether they're running the Spec C or not this weekend. But yeah, I will I will read upon that and I will talk about it if you remind me in the pre-race on Sunday for the watch along. So yes, thanks for the time the US appreciates it, says Tonka Toy Truck. No worries, mate, no worries. Just having one quick start. I thought I saw a question there that was one that I wanted to answer, but obviously not. I think it was a question being put to somebody else in chat, but I think we're going to leave it there. Hartley's performance, says Ben Milrot. Yeah, if there were lots of options for that Torro Rosso seat, I think he'd be gone. But for whatever reason, I've got it in my head that he may well stay because I don't, as I said, Tictum can't because he won't have the super license points. Schumacher will have the super license points, but isn't ready for Formula One. Wehrlein looks like he's off to Formula E. Gasly's obviously off to Red Bull. So unless they maybe go and somehow get themselves a young Japanese driver to kind of help commercially with Honda, if there's any available. I don't think Makino can. I don't think Fukuzumi can. I don't think either have the points. Maybe Matsushita could be an option, but I'm not convinced it's going to be them. So I've got a feeling he might stay. But there was an interesting point during the session. I don't know if you saw. I'll end on this one. But I don't know if you saw during the session, but Brendan Hartley, he locked up. Not massively, just a little bit into turn one, or the first chicane, turn two technically. And there was an interesting point on the pit wall. They kind of panned to Franz Tost, and he sat shaking his head quite frustratedly. And that was quite telling. Again, maybe I read too much into these things, but that was a man that didn't look happy and looked a little bit frustrated. Of course, that's a set of tyres potentially ruined and all that information and data gone. But he'd already said in Singapore that Hartley needed to start performing, needed to up his game in order to keep his seat. And it just looks like if it's entirely down to Franz Tost, I think he'd go and find somebody other than Brendan Hartley. But I just don't think there's anybody out there. I'm just looking at chat, see if anybody's spotted. Van Dorn's name keeps cropping up. I thought he was nailed on for that. I thought his time at where was he? At McLaren Honda. I thought that time with the Honda engine was going to be something that might appeal to Torro Rosso and they might try and take him, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen at all. So I think Hartley might end up staying, but kind of almost out of, as awful as it sounds, because Hartley is another one who is a really nice guy, and I think people do like him, but he's not performed this year. You only have to look at his performance versus his teammates, and yeah, I just think he might end up with it by default, effectively. Just a point I've just literally spotted at the corner of my eye. I'm going to leave it on this one, I promise. John T mentioned about the fire at the Haas garage on Thursday night. That was done by a black box on the tyre warmers. Caught fire, ruined the tyres, obviously inside of them, and then damaged another set as well. So that's two sets of tyres ruined. That leaves them two sets down, but I think they are still pushing. I've not seen an update, but I think they are still pushing Pirelli to try and get those two tyres reimbursed, if you like. But it was just a fire. It was extinguished by marshals on the scene. It was nothing like the Williams pit fire in Barcelona back in 2012. But yeah, there you go. There you go. Thank you very much, John T. It was on my list. But unfortunately, I forgot to load my list up. I just loaded up my news stories for some reason. So, yeah, I wanted to bring that to you all and let you know that everything's fine. It wasn't a major fire, but it's destroyed two sets of tyres. And KJ just saying they asked the FIA for new sets. So obviously, they're still looking at trying to sort that one out. But I'm going to leave it there. That is the fourth time I've said that in 15 minutes because you know how I like to overrun. And these Friday warm-ups are supposed to be half an hour and not 45 minutes. But it's me and I just can't stop talking because I love F1 and love chatting to you all about it. But we've got loads coming up over this weekend, of course. If the Kvyat news gets announced, I will do a news video like the Haas one this morning and like I did for Giovinazzi, where I'll bring you the quotes and my initial reaction to it all. A little preview to that, I suppose. I'm quite torn on it, but I think it's the right call. But we'll go into that in that video if it gets announced tomorrow. The qualifying report will be up tomorrow. I usually say by 8 p.m, but I believe qualifying is an hour earlier. So hopefully by 7 p.m, if not earlier. That's obviously UK time. And then on Sunday, yes, it's all a little bit early. It's all a little bit early on Sunday. The race is at 10 past 12, so I'm going to be live from 11:40 a.m. That's UK time for the pre-race and the watch-along. And then I'm going to be live around 3 p.m. with, I hope John T. I'm not 100% need to check with him, but hopefully John T. and definitely Chamber as well for the post-race reaction. And then on Monday I'll be doing the debrief as well, which is a new name for the race review. It's exactly the same thing, but with a few little tweaks, a little bit like the preview, so which I hope you all enjoyed. You all certainly seem to, so that's awesome. In the meantime, though, for updates and whatnot, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and as ever to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.